Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fatima Ali Salam. I'm the chair for the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council, and this is the July meeting for the GMNC. Tonight, we are fortunate to have a wonderful guest speaker, Alla Mukahhal. She's a transportation planner, and she was in private practice right now, but she actually used to work for the Boston Transportation Department. She is the person who actually is one of the authors for the maximum parking ratios, as well as a project manager, had been a project manager for the transportation demand management point system, which is related to parking. One of the reasons that thought to have this topic finally is that I think this is probably we all know it's probably one of the most contentious things at every single zoning meeting, I can tell you. It definitely comes up in almost every type of meeting in the city of Boston, bar none. And for our community, it is especially hard because I'm actually not sure if we still hold the unfortunate gold medal for the highest number of vehicles per household or not. But be that as it may, there are a lot of other things that are going on. Just to start, one of the things that was also very interesting in reviewing the different zoning for the city, there's a section in the first article, section 1.2, and it said that to part of the purpose of the zoning code, it says to lessen congestion in the streets. Now, mind you, that those 6 words don't appear in any of the zoning districting codes at all for any neighborhood, but it is in the general overall. And that's important because it directly relates to how parking is viewed and as congestion. For our neighborhood, we have, I believe, one of the greatest numbers of streets, major streets that are actually throughways to all neighborhoods, even downtown in the city. So we have Blue Hill Avenue, Cummins Highway, American Legion Highway, River Street, Norfolk Street, Morton Street, so 6 right off the bat. But without any further ado, I want Alla to begin, and if you'd like to determine where you'd like to start is fine. If you have anything screen documentation you'd like to share, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me and for having me here. I appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of listen to me talk, and hopefully this will be more of a conversation than just me kind of talking at everyone. But so when Fatma reached out, I essentially thought that probably the best use of my time here would be to kind of explain some of the work I did while I was at the city of Boston, and that's now kind of being carried forward by my former colleagues. I did a lot of thinking about parking. How do we deal with parking, and what is the developer's responsibility to the communities that they are developing in? What can we ask of them? What can we turn into policy? So everything I want to share with you here today can be found online. So feel free to kind of like look through at your leisure, so to speak. But everything that is going to be talked about today is publicly available. I don't work at the city of Boston anymore. I'm now at Kittleson. I do a lot of parking work and land use, and thinking about the same issues I thought about Boston, but now across the country. So different contexts, and the understanding across the country is there's only so many cars we can fit on our city streets. This is an issue of a couple of things. One, of geometry. There's limited street space, and you can either fit 40 people on a bus, or you can fit 40 people in 40 cars. And just by looking at pure math, pure geometry, it's just going to cause very different issues. How we move around the city and the opportunities that are being provided for people to be able to move around the city determines health outcomes, determines job opportunities, determines social class, determines economic mobility, determines equity. And so how we decide, how the city and how you all work with the city to decide how projects play out really does have long-ranging impacts. So I'm just going to pull up the maximum parking ratios. I want to start with that. The way it usually worked before I came on, and my BTD colleagues can speak more eloquently, former colleagues can speak more eloquently on it than I can. But essentially, by the time a development came to the Boston Transportation Department, it was what we would call essentially, a lot of things have already been determined. And that is because of the way the process is played out. A developer will submit a letter of intent to the BPDA. The BPDA logs them in the system. There's online public facing website that shows you all the different projects and where they are in development and where they are in the process of the development review process. And so developments don't usually come to the city unless everything has already kind of been thought through. They already have a pretty general idea of what the building is going to look like. They already have a general idea of how much parking they want to provide. They have a general idea of how many apartment units, and it changes obviously through the process. Some of it may change, but they don't just come with a blank piece of paper and say, okay, let's work it out together. That's usually not how it works. A lot of the things, if you feel a little bit caught off guard, while I was at BTD, I felt caught off guard all the time because developers were coming in with a lot of the stuff already baked, so to speak. And so that's why kind of creating a parking methodology that made sense, that was grounded in context and in the built environment, was really important. I'm not saying it's perfect, but given the data that we have, it's as good. It's well nuanced. It's nuanced. And so I'm going to share my screen here. This is the website that really goes deep into what the maximum parking ratios are. They are part of the Transportation Access Plan Agreement. And there's actually a page, if you haven't seen it, that has every Transportation Access Plan Agreement that was executed that BTD has. And you can find it on, if we go down to resources, it's under here, under Transportation Development Review. You can find every list of TAPAs, Transportation Access Plan Agreement. So if you're like, hey, I'm kind of wondering about this development that went in a few years ago, I'd like to see what was in the agreement, you can look it up here. Hopefully we have it. And then if you don't want to look it up, you could go to a map. The map has a map of all the Transportation Access Plan agreements that were signed. And then this page also explains how TAPAs work and what BTD planners are trying to prioritize. And essentially what they're trying to prioritize is safety, manage parking demand, and improve conditions for walking, biking, and taking public transit. And so it's a very iterative process. It does involve public meetings, and it takes sometimes a really long time to get it to a place that's acceptable to both the city, the public, and developers. And then we have kind of, a graphic here that explains, how does the development review process works. And as you can see, Transportation Access Plan Agreement is all the way down here. That doesn't mean BTD doesn't have conversations earlier in the process. It certainly does. But there's just a lot of steps before we finally even get to a Transportation Access Plan Agreement, right? And then once that's approved and the board approves it and all that stuff, there's then the construction permit. So these are all the guidelines. that kind of, or most of them at least, that go into the transportation access plan agreement. And I'm just going to quickly copy this and plug it in here so that you all can, look through it. So that should be in the chat. So going back to the maximum parking ratios, there's a couple of things here that we were trying to do. We were trying to make sure that these ratios were grounded in reality. We were trying to make sure that they were responsive to the built environment around them, and that we right size the amount of parking that is in Boston, and we're not overbuilding parking. And there's a couple of reasons why we're trying to kind of manage how much parking is built. First of all, building parking in Boston is extremely expensive. By my calculations and my research, I saw that it could cost up to $50,000 per parking space. When I spoke to developers, when I spoke to the BPDA, they said actually their rule of thumb for downtown is about $100,000 per parking space. And of course, it varies throughout the city, but on average, anywhere between $25,000 and $50,000. Now, that cost is passed down to tenants. That's not like a cost that like developers are like, ah, shucks, we'll just, we'll pay it from our own pockets. That's something that's cost that does have an impact on how much tenants end up paying in rent, how much people end up paying to buy a condo, et cetera. The other thing is that we don't need, the city doesn't need to be a city of parking lots. In order to actually improve the quality of life on the streets and to reduce traffic fatalities and to reduce congestion and to reduce air pollution, the reality is we do have to think seriously about how are we going to right size the amount of parking and, dare I say it, reduce the amount of parking. But that can only happen if we're also providing alternatives for people to be able to get around. If a community is entirely car dependent, then there needs to be projects that are going in place so that people have alternatives. They don't feel like they have to drive everywhere. And the other thing you want to think about are the most vulnerable users of the road. Think pedestrians, kids, elderly. Elderly people also use transit, a lot of it too. And so how are we designing our streets that makes sure that we don't have traffic fatalities, we don't have crashes, and we take care of the most vulnerable users of the road. And all of it goes back to parking. This presentation you can also find online. It's on the same page. It's on the maximum parking ratios. I have a map of how the parking ratios are developed. There is a methodology and report. So this is kind of really technical, but it's fully transparent about how the analysis was done. And then you have the presentation and report, the general presentation. And so we do, when I was at City of Boston, we did a few surveys trying to get a gauge of how people are thinking about driving, and a lot of people said that post-pandemic they do want to drive more than before, and that's just going to lead to more congestion and more pollution and more traffic fatalities. That's just the reality. The more people are driving, the more traffic fatalities that's going to happen. I'm not going to go through everything through here just for the sake of time. I do just want to highlight a few slides. This is also well cited. So, if you're questioning where I got these numbers for how much parking costs, this is the website. You can go to it. It's essentially a research website on how much construction costs. A single underground parking space costs more than the most expensive financial incentive program. What's a financial incentive program? We'll get into that a little bit. But essentially, the gist of it here is that parking costs are passed down to tenants. And so by reducing parking in areas that don't need extra parking, the development cost is reduced. I understand that in practice, that doesn't always play out that way. I understand, but that is when we talk to developers, they do tell us that parking is extremely expensive. They're paying a lot for it. And that cost doesn't, that cost doesn't go away. It does get passed down to tenants. So that is a reality that's also happening. The idea here is that rather than having a city filled with parking garages, that we have a city that is, that people can get around using different modes. And the cost of garage parking, just looking at national studies, does increase the housing units rent by about 17%. So it's not just about right sizing parking or reducing parking. It has to be in tandem of two things. One, it has to be about you manage the demand for parking by providing high quality alternative options. You know, that means better sidewalks, that means better bike lanes, that means faster bus service, better bus service. If you have these in place, then there's just less of a need to park. And if there's less of a need to park, there's less of a need to drive. There's less of a need to drive. There's less of a need of people treating some of our neighborhood and commercial streets as if they're a highway. And that's a really important piece of creating more livable communities. The thesis of the maximum parking ratios is really simple. If you're a large development coming in to a walkable, transit-rich area, you should build less parking. If you don't have a walkable, transit-rich area, then you will be allowed more parking. And the idea of these ratios is that they're supposed to be dynamic, that as the built environment changes, the ratios in the neighborhood change as well. We gave each parcel in the city a score based on these criteria. First, the number of jobs accessible by transit. If you can get to work by transit within 30 minutes, chances are you're probably gonna have to, you probably think about driving on some days. The walk score, is this a walkable area? Does it have good sidewalks? Are the crosswalks okay? You know, do people feel comfortable, you know, crossing the road? Proximity to grocery stores, because people don't just drive to work, they drive to grocery stores, they drive to other uses as well. Proximity to rapid transit, proximity to all other modes of transportation, including key bus routes, commuter rail, ferry, bike share station, car share station. All these play a role in how much a score is. And then finally, whether or not a parcel is in a restricted parking zone. For folks in Mattapan, Dorchester, you don't have to worry about this. The restricted parking zone is mostly in downtown and parts of South Boston. So we mapped it out. We mapped each criteria out. We looked at job accessibility. We looked at walk scores by zip code. We looked at the number of food retailers in Boston. You know, like actually grocery stores. The half-mile walk shed from transit, all the different stations, the key bus routes, the car share stations, blue bike stations, and the restricted district. And again, this is mostly in downtown and parts of South Boston, so not a thing that impacts Mattapan or Dorchester. And then we weighed each of these criteria based on research and what we were hearing from developers about what is most important for people. And so research tells us if you live in a walkable area, if you're close to subway, these are the two most important things, then chances are you'll need less parking because you're driving less. And I'm just gonna skip this part right here. It's just a little technical, but this is the map essentially. This is what it looks like. And you can see Mattapan kind of scores on the lower end of things, which makes sense considering the transit options that are available to Mattapan. And so, but it changes, it's down to the parcel base. And here's what all this means is that the higher your score, so thinking downtown, the lower your parking ratio, the less parking you have. The higher your score, I'm sorry, the lower your score, then vice versa is also true. The lower your score, the higher your parking. So here, West Roxbury, Hyde Park, Mattapan, parts of Dorchester, parts of Roslindale all have low scores. And this map is supposed to be dynamic, and there is like an online version that you could zoom in, zoom out, and play around with. will tell you, you know, these areas, the dark blue will have to be allowed more parking just because there's less transit options allowed. We don't really stop here. There's more to this than just that. But the idea is we're trying to create something that does reflect what is happening on the ground and that has available data. That's the key term here. We have to have data that is available. If the data isn't available, we can't include it in the analysis. These, you know, ratios are meant to kind of be guidelines to kind of help planners figure out how much parking do these different areas need, do these different parcels need, and how much parking can you build in a way that is responsive to the built environment around it. So a couple of notes on the implementation. These parking ratios only apply to Article 80 projects that are 50,000 square feet or larger. The parking ratio map is dynamic, so the scores do change over time as transit and mobility services, grocery stores, and walk scores change. And only net new parking spaces count towards the ratio. So basically, if there's already parking on the site, what we're counting towards the ratio, it's what's extra that's built. And these are meant to be released with something called the Transportation Demand Management Point System, because again, the whole point of this isn't just to say we're gonna reduce the amount of parking. It's okay, you're gonna reduce the amount of parking. All right, what is the alternative? What else are you offering? And so the TDM point system is about getting developers to put serious money and serious investment to make it easier for people to change behavior. And the TDM point system, which is also, the link is also in the chat. There's a tool here that you can download and play around with, this Excel tool. And it basically is based on a couple of things. You put in, you know, whether or not the building's entirely residential, you put in the address, and then you put in whatever the mobility score, right, that we had here. The mobility score is this. So, you know, mobility score around here is going to be lower. Mobility score around here is going to be, in downtown area, is going to be higher. And based on the mobility score, you have to reach a certain number of points. And those points, then the developer has to go through this sheet and has to say, okay, here's what I can do on this site. And that includes things like providing a bike share station, providing bike share membership, providing subsidized transit passes for up to a year. If it's an employer, then, you know, it's on a regular basis. How much transit subsidy are they going to provide, right? And there's like all kinds of things as well, all kinds of things that they will have to do as well to kind of make it easier for people to choose to not drive, right? So it's a list of incentives essentially, and some of them are disincentives. Providing free car share membership and subsidy, making sure there's a mixed use development, right? So making sure that, you know, there's a fitness center or there's a grocery store on site or something that allows people to not need a car. Those things are about changing behavior. You know, so when we talk about TDM, it's the flip side of infrastructure. What BTD also does in addition to this is they make sure that the developer contributes to improving the sidewalks and the traffic signals and the crosswalks. But what this does, what TDM point system does, is that it focuses on incentivizing people to use transit, ride sharing, walking, biking, and carpooling other than just driving alone. I'm going to stop right here because I feel like I just threw a ton of information at everyone. And see what people are thinking.
Thank you, Alla. We have some things other than myself asking questions to see in the chat. There was a question from chat about why is parking so expensive overall for a project, but I believe you explained that as because it's looked at the excavation cost and other things that go into whether or not the costs are actually covered or realized if they're not used. Is that correct?
Yeah, the underground parking is definitely much more expensive, and exactly excavation. And remember, you have a bunch of cars. You got to really think about air ventilation, so that people don't end up choking on the fumes. Yeah, a lot of concrete, a lot of just engineering that's required to kind of that goes into this stuff. So yeah, it's very expensive.
Right. So one thing, I'm glad, thank you for all that information. One thing that I think the next thing that comes to mind, I'm sure it's already on the minds of others, is how do you go and first require the city to require the developer, one, to go and disclose what their TDM scores are, and maybe it not only be for those in spaces over 50,000 square feet, because we have two Article 80 processes. We have Article B, and we have the other four, those that are 20,000 square feet.
Yep.
There's that part process, and the smaller Article 80s versus the larger ones. You also have projects that, because of the Mattapan it has such a high number of single, 1, 2s and 3 family homes, more so than very large developments. When large developments are introduced, how does the scoring actually take the surrounding area into consideration, and what should the abutters be asking, so that it becomes more of a balance, because it is a lot to take in if you've never had you had an empty spot, and then all of a sudden that within a year's time there's going to be between 300 to 350 people living on a site, and there is no guarantee that they will or will not have cars. There's nothing that restricts people at all. So, and cost doesn't seem to be a driving factor for a lot of people at all. There are people I know in our neighborhood who, because of the insurance, pay $4,000 a year in car insurance or more.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's extremely expensive.
Right.
If they yeah.
Right. So with all of that, and it's not even without any points on your insurance or anything. It's just because you live in Mattapan, right?
Yeah.
So all that taken, how does a community, a civic association, when a developer comes before them, they're told because there's a nearby station and they see people are going to take public transportation, but the mere cost, they don't see realized at all. And the cost of either the condominiums or the rents, they don't see those savings reflected. We're not seeing lower rents. We're not seeing lower home costs for anyone. We're seeing, in fact, the exact opposite. So we're trying to understand, how do people realize the savings? How are they seeing it as a benefit? And what questions should we be asking developers in order for this to be a balanced situation? Because right now it seems like they're getting all the benefits, but no one else is.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna just share my screen again one more time real quick. And then, so on the TDM page, which I shared, there's a 1-pager of all the TDM strategies. There's also TDM fact sheets. And so here's the 1-pager. This is just to kind of give you everything that a developer can select. A developer has to do everything here. Everything that's in the baseline, these are basically kind of non-negotiables. Like, these are just starting. You have to do this. You have to participate in the MBTA program, for example. You have to provide an emergency ride home, real-time transit information. But that's not what's really interesting. What's most interesting is the impact. They have to select at least one of the options here under the red. And I think getting developers to pay for a transit subsidy right off the bat is really important. And that's something that you should be aware of, right? Like when the developer comes to has a public meeting, you should ask them, what are the TDM? There's a TDM point system. There's a bunch of things you have to select. There's a bunch of options you have to select. Are you just choosing the parking reduction, parking pricing options, or are you also providing a transit subsidy? Where's the transit subsidy, and why can't you provide a transit subsidy if you're spending this much on parking, right? A single parking space, $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Transit subsidy for a year, I mean, that's not how much that costs, right? Even if they just cover half. The other thing here, what are they doing in terms of mixed use development? Are they just slapping on a gym and calling it a day, or are they actually going to provide a retail floor? And will the retail floor, will they be able to commit to something that, say, the community actually needs, right? So that people don't have to drive all the way out to Dedham for a grocery store, for example, to get their groceries. In each of these, there's like a full page that describes what each of these options are. But this isn't the only thing they're supposed to be doing, right? This isn't the only thing. There's also, how are they improving the sidewalks around and near the development? You should be asking that. How are they improving the crosswalks? Why, if I'm trying to get to your development, and let's say I do drive, but let's say I park 3 blocks down and I walk to your development, and I have to cross Blue Hill Ave to get to your development. What are you doing to improve, or any other street? Doesn't have to be Blue Hill Ave, could be Talbot, could be whatever. Talbot is in Convent Square. I know it's not in Mattapan, but I live near there, so it's an easy reference.
It's actually part of Greater Mattapan.
Well, there you go. So
yeah.
How are they improving? And I've crossed, Talbot many times. I've driven down it. I've biked it. I've walked it. Walking it feels like I'm gambling with my life every single time, right? So how are they also improving the crosswalk and the cross section so that it feels safe for the pedestrian? And I understand, like, for Mattapan does get the higher end of ratios. They do end up getting more parking. Whether or not that's something you want, that's up to you. I'm not gonna give my opinion on that. That's yours to figure out. But okay, they're providing all this parking, so that's going to cost a lot of money. They're passing down those costs to the tenants, right? But what else are they doing? I think thinking about how are they contributing to reducing traffic fatalities is really important. Asking how they are making sure cars aren't barreling down the street. Like, these are a lot of these streets in both Mattapan and Lower Dorchester and Greater Mattapan these are residential streets or commercial streets. These aren't highways. So why are they sometimes treated as highways? And it really depends on kind of the geometric infrastructure that are put in place to slow cars down a little bit. It's okay for cars to go slow. It's okay. And I know that drivers don't want to hear that. Drivers want to go really fast. But when you're in a neighborhood, when you're not on a highway, you have to slow down so that also drivers from other cities don't see it as a through fare, right? Like, this isn't just a place where I can just barrel down to get to downtown or wherever I need to get to. This is the street itself is a destination. The destination is the commercial retail stores around the street. So thinking about both, what are they doing from the financial incentive perspective, and why did they choose the things that they did, right? Like, there should be some expectation that, like, when the developer comes, they should be coming in with these already selected. And if they're not selected, they should be already thinking about it, because this needs to be now submitted as part of the TAPA, right? So thinking about the infrastructure piece, how is the curb changing? How are the sidewalks changing? How is the crosswalk changing? And then the financial incentive piece. How are you making my life easier to get around if I want to use, the 22 or the 23, or if I want to use biking? How is that going to be? Or if I just want to walk, how is that going to make my life easier? And what are you providing financially to make it more feasible for me?
Yeah, Thank you. I think that's, those are definitely the next steps that we have to, as a community, and also request and require BTD, Mass DOT, to actually participate in this and weigh in more heavy on the side for the residents. But Kathy Glenn, she's had her hand up for a little while. If you want to ask your question, Kathy, and then Russell, Rep. Holmes, sorry.
Hi, thanks very much. I appreciate the presentation. There's a lot of good information here. One of the things I'm kind of struggling with, and I don't even quite know how to phrase this question, but number one, it does seem to me that it would be so much more beneficial to have the transportation planning and the parking issue at an earlier point in when a developer is submitting proposals. But the other thing that occurs to me is that a lot of what you talked about what we're going to handle in the future is dependent upon human behavior. And it always strikes me at meetings, community meetings that I go to, is that nobody talks about the demographics, the existing demographics of housing and who's using cars within a given community like Mattapan or Dorchester currently, and who is the developer trying to attract in the built environment. So there's a lot of buildings going up, but nobody seems to be asking the question is, who are they trying to attract? Or maybe nobody wants to have that conversation. I say that because from my own experience as a single mother, there were times when my daughter was younger, it would have been it was impossible for me to, get her to school, get to work, get back, get her to the games that she was supposed to be at, et cetera. And I know everybody else has the same issues, and they had, if you have 2 or 3 kids, it's even worse. Whereas as I've gotten older, it's fine for me. She got older, she could do her thing on public transportation. I could use public transportation if I wanted to go somewhere. So my point is, how do we, if all of this is so dependent on human behavior, how do we get to the demographic information early enough in the planning process to be able to, so the city can say to a developer, we don't really think your proposed building meets the needs of the future and accommodates sufficient to reduce parking. I hope that makes sense.
I'd say absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm not really sure. So are you saying that when a developer comes in that they should be providing what demographics they're trying to attract?
I believe that is, I think this gets to the heart of what our community overall is experiencing, and we're talking about gentrification.
Yeah.
And this gets to, I think Kathy hit it on the head, where if you're actually when developers come in, they have to get the approval from the community that is existing. And they may or may not make agreements that actually satisfy the needs of the current residents. Perfect example is the former Fairlawn Estates. That's an almost 400 unit development that, most people here, if you grew up around here, you knew it. It's on Cummins Highway. And when a developer, an investor developer came and bought it, now it's become ground zero for tenants before who were low income, because it's now determined to be a transit-oriented design development. Not much change has happened. Tenants are seeing their rents, in some cases, double or more, and they're fighting evictions. And those are the kind of things where a community, just because it's transit-oriented design, they're not seeing those benefits because they're not being able to afford to stay in the community. They're being asked, they're being directed outside not only of their community, but most times outside of the city. So it becomes a, you're trying to, we understand, I don't think anybody here is against clean air. I don't think anybody is against less congestion, but I think people are trying to understand where do we go early enough in the process, whether it is small development or not. How do you get the city to say, okay, now when you're doing your planning, and maybe it starts with us, Kathy and folks, maybe it just says, we say to the city, we need to make this change in Article 80 process right up front in the beginning, not waiting to the end. Transportation is integral into everybody's daily life. You have to require the developer to do these things up front, because otherwise the maximum benefits aren't really realized except by those people who aren't even there yet.
The other thing that I feel like I'm hearing here is that what I'd like to also know is, what's the city's plan to battle gentrification? What's the city's plan to make sure that as we grow, the people who have been here aren't pushed out? Because everybody has a story of being pushed out of an apartment because either the landlord just kicked them out, or the landlord increased the rent to a point where you have no choice but to leave. And so that's definitely a serious. I've been in Boston long enough to have experienced it as well, right? So what is the city's, because I don't think that's going to be completely solved by transportation, but there needs to be an overarching plan of how the city responds to increased prices that are pricing out a lot of its longtime residents. And what is the response to what's the official response to gentrification? How does that work? And let me know, because
I don't think we're going to solve it all here tonight.
No.
But, Rep. Holmes and then Barbara Crislow.
Thank you for the presentation tonight. I have a couple comments and questions, I should say. Is there, I think the problem begins even before all of even the conversations today, because I think there's a mismatch between the goal that the city has and community. What do I mean by that? When I heard the goals from when you were here, it was really to push towards less parking. And I can tell you, I have not been to a community meeting yet where folks are saying they want less parking. And so I think that is where this actually begins. Because I think about even the project that's going up on Wellington Hill. The city said basically, hey, you have the 28 running down here frequently, you have the 31 running down here frequently. Why do you need all of this parking? And David's on the phone and others from Wellington Hill, I had to call BPDA and say, look, if you don't give these folks 40 parking spots for 40 units, they're not going to be a yes to your project. And they were like, no, there's no way they should have 40 parking spots with buses running in front of their building every day. And so that's where I think the problem is, where was there a conversation? I know, I read the text or the string of messages that we are seen as a leader, but we need to be leading by trying to communicate to our constituents that we're actually growing towards, please get on the train, please get on bikes, please, we're trying to push that. And I don't think that was brought in by constituents. Was there a conversation there at all?
The goal isn't less parking. The goal is less congestion and more safety. The goal is less traffic fatalities. The goal is being able to walk without feeling like you're gonna get trampled on by 6 different cars. That's the goal. And it all, when we did this in-depth research, what it all came back to is you have a lot of cars and the city is growing. And guess what? There's gonna be more cars and there's gonna be more congestion. And so there has to be a response from the transportation department. And I say this now as a consultant, there has to be a response from the transportation department on what are they going to do to reduce fatalities? What are they going to do to make it safe for all modes to be able to move up and down the city? And how are we going to reduce congestion? Because the more congestion you have, the slower you're going, period. The slower you're going, literally, there's literally a connection between commute times and social opportunity. They're like the longer, and Mattapan being at the end of the city has some of the longest commute times in the city. And that directly, there was a Harvard study about it, and there directly translates to long commute times. Once you go over the 45-minute limit you will have less social opportunity. You will have less economic mobility. You will have less job opportunity. That is a serious problem. And building more cars and having more, building more parking spaces and just having more cars on the road is going to make that 45 minutes even like, it's going to be like, 45 minutes is going to sound amazing, right? And so that's
so what I'm saying, I guess
the
what
problem.
I'm saying is, as Fatima was just saying, we agree. We want less congestion. We want less asthmas. We want all of those things to be less, but that means we have, less cars, which means less parking. And I'm saying, I believe in the role that I'm sitting in, that is where the problem begins. Like there should have been a conversation with our entire city to say, hey guys, demand more better transit, demand some other things, because we can't continue to build our way out of this with parking spots. And that's where I believe our problem begins, because we have to grow and we have to grow with less cars. And so my other thing is, sorry to take two questions here, is there something for smaller developments? Like you were working on these tapas, and literally I just went on your list, and there have been 8 in Mattapan over the last 21 years, because obviously we don't have 50,000 square feet being developed often. I can tell you I get as much of a fight at someone trying to build 100 units as I get for 3 units. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, it is the exact, I mean, I might as well,
absolutely.
I might as well just go on and build 100 every single time, because why would I ever build 3? Because they're going to come at me as hard for building 3 units as I am 100. So is there something for smaller developers as well to have this conversation around parking? Because it almost always comes back to everyone wants to park in front of their house and they want their own spot.
Absolutely. So here's the problem, and this is an issue with the zoning code that needs to be resolved, and I'm not sure how it's being resolved right now, but here's the issue here. The issue is that Article 80 says if it's 50,000 square feet or more, we're going to give leeway to BTD to come up with the appropriate policies to address transportation impacts of developments. There isn't really that language for anything less than 50,000 square feet. That there isn't leeway for BTD to come up with these policies. And if BPDA wants to come up with these policies or take these policies and incorporate them, there literally has to be a change in the zoning code. That's the problem. Now, having said that, there's literally nothing preventing you from going to a 20,000 square foot development and pulling out the TDM point system and saying, listen, we want to see what you're doing in terms of financial incentives. We want to see what you're doing in terms of improving walkways and pathways and accessibility points, and how you're contributing to the MBTA and helping buses get faster. There's nothing preventing you from that. It's just, it's harder for my former colleagues to go to, a 21,000 square foot building and developer and say, you have to do the TDM point system because Article 80 isn't triggered in this point, and they have to, what they'll say is, no, we're just gonna go with the underlying zoning, and that's all that we have to do.
Thank you, Fatima. This is awesome, because this is the education that should have happened 15, 20 years ago.
This is why we're doing it now, because we
have to convince,
are very tired.
Everyone. Yeah, we have to talk about this parking issue, because it is a fight in every meeting. I can't build a thing in this city because somebody's fighting about their parking spot.
But I can tell you, Rep, it's not just about parking. It is also the other side, right? Because I think everyone here knows and agrees that we don't really have approach those building developments, whatever projects that are under 20,000 square feet. Even when we talk about the ones that are 50,000 square feet, the community benefits do not spill out to those abutters of the 50,000 square feet, right? They're not realizing the benefits that may only go to those people who live in the development. They don't, even though they are directly affected by it. And that has to be discussed. that is the part that needs to be brought into the community benefits process. And it needs to not only be about, not only about the sidewalks and lighting, et cetera. Those should be standards across the city, no matter who you are. You shouldn't have to negotiate that. That's not a negotiating. My having a light, having a trash can, having a sidewalk of a certain length. I mean, all those things should not be negotiable. That should just be a standard. I think Matthew will agree that if you live in West Roxbury, you should expect the same. People in Mattapan should expect the same thing. They should know how wide a sidewalk is. People who are on bicycles should be able to bike the same way in Mattapan that they do in West Roxbury, Hyde Park, or any place else safely. And I don't want to see any more ghost bikes. I can't wait to the day that those are the only ones that I will see, the ones that are here. In order to remember those who were killed because someone killed them with the car. That's not the way that, a community is supposed to be designed. But I don't want to make sure we have quite a number of hands. Let me make sure, Matthew, if you can help me with the order. I think next is Barbara.
And make sure you don't miss Mr. Lopes, who's got his hand up.
Oh,
in
I'm
the
sorry.
video.
Mr. Lopes, I think you're after Barbara. Am I incorrect?
Fatima, he can go before me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
David, go ahead.
You have the floor, sir.
All right. Very, very interesting presentation and a lot of good information. And I understand the charts and all that, but I guess my piece is, how do you fold into that the fact that Blue Hill Avenue, Morton Street are major thoroughfares for other towns and cities, bringing their people through downtown or get to the hospital district, going down route, to Morton Street or 203, and that impacts us those of us who live here immensely. So when you look at traffic patterns and you look at parking, how does that play into this so that we're not creating a situation we already have? I mean, if you come down Blue Hill Avenue during the week by 3:30, you got a line backed up from Mattapan Square all the way up to Walk Hill Street.
No, I know. I know.
Going out, and that's with 2 lanes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, what will happen if there's only 1 lane? And what will happen if someone breaks down or if someone has to let someone out of their car, to with groceries or something, or they're trying to park, or police car comes down because they're going to something, or a fire truck. What do you do then if you only have 1 lane?
Yeah, that's
so I'm concerned about all those things, and how do we put that in the development in looking at the development process, Russell, and how can we get the city to look at, well, I get the thing with the less parking and greater transit, but when are you going to give us the better transit? And that transit shouldn't be ending in Mattapan Square. Maybe it should be ending up by 128.
I love that you literally provided an answer to your own question, because that is absolutely correct. Yeah, I did parking for the city. I will not pretend to be an expert on Blue Hill Ave, but that's exactly what you said. If there is limited space, we have to push people to transit. If we want to push people to transit, we have to provide great frequent transit service that makes it possible, to actually
all the way
make it
to the
usable.
major highways.
All the way to the major highways and major thoroughways. And I think I'm not going to answer this question because I don't think it's actually my place to answer this question. I think this is a conversation you definitely need to have with BTD. And this is a conversation that you need to have amongst yourselves. What is the solution to Blue Hill Ave? Because what we have right now is not possible, is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for now. It's not sustainable for the future. And it wasn't sustainable a year ago. So
And my last statement before I leave, Fatima, and this is directed to you and to our state rep, is because 28 is a state road, from what I understand. we need to have some sequencing in the lighting and more crosswalks. Okay, the lighting is too far apart. You could, thank God they finally put a light over at Clockwood Street, because you would get cars starting at Morton, and by the time they got up to Morningside Baptist Church, they're doing miles an hour.
Yeah,
And
I can tell you, I agree.
if we had regular traffic lights that were sequenced in a proper way, you know, we could alleviate some of this stuff.
Definitely, I think that is part of the solution, but I think as it's been said before, part of the greater solution is, one, to bring these conversations right up front in the development process. Don't wait till the end. Knowing what is possible and demanding it right up front. I can tell you yesterday, Pam Jones went with me on my walk. I believe Pam saw was eye-opening when she saw. She and I, we definitely are different types of people to cross Blue Hill Avenue, for sure. She's a little bit more daring than I am. Pam, is that correct? I can say that. But it also is the amount of the way that people drive, the way that people walk. It's everywhere. And as time goes on during the day, you'll see even more different things happen. I mean, Pam, I'll let her go and say, but a occurrence, she called me at 8:30 last night. You want to say why you were calling me at 8:30 last night, Pam?
I don't remember, Fatima. What did I have to say? I'm so serious.
You called me to tell me that you were struggling on Blue Hill Avenue because—
Oh my goodness. Yes, I had to pick up my son from South Station, and they blocked off American Legion Highway by 8 o'clock. I had no idea. I thought it started at dusk. And it was clearly still daylight at 8 o'clock. But in any case, yeah, that was traffic was backed up. It was blocking American Legion Highway. I couldn't even turn to go onto American Legion Highway to go down Columbia Road. And coming back home, I put in my GPS and it had me take 93 in through to Milton to get back home instead of coming through Columbia Road and Blue Hill Ave. But yeah, it's so congested. It really is.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I think that we're not gonna all solve this in tonight's meeting, but we definitely have to have these conversations, not only when we're talking to one developer. I ask people to, bring these things to the Public Service Committee that Matthew has every month, and also to bring them to your civic associations and think not only about that one development, think about what happens on the 6 blocks around you, because it all affects how you live and go back and forth to your homes, and what's available to you. It all matters.
Got a
Barbara,
couple more hands up.
Barbara, and then Dennis. And do you see someone else, Matt? I don't have all the screens. I think there are 4 people. Barbara,
Helena,
Helena.
and Kathy,
Is there another?
your hand's still up. You probably just need to put yours back down, Kathy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Barbara, Crystal, do you want to unmute? Barbara, you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all over the board on this because I've been watching developments come in, and West Eldon Street in Vicinity Neighborhood Association was created 25 years ago because of traffic and speeding. And it doesn't seem after the 25 years we've gotten any better, no matter who we contact, the state or the city. But I do want to agree when we talk about developments coming in, parking should be, again, like you all said, should be in the beginning of the conversation. we have developers coming in and right off the bat, there's no parking available in the neighborhood. And then they put in developments that still don't provide parking, but their tenants will have cars. So I'm looking at a whole lot of issues that are going on. When we were talking about sidewalks, there's a lot of sidewalks in Mattapan that just, I mean, they're still blacktops. They're not sidewalks. Shopping, when I first came to Mattapan, you could walk to Mattapan Square and get a variety of stores. Even when I first came to Boston in the 40s, there was a place where you can go, you can walk to Mattapan Square, Blue Hill Avenue, Grove Hall. You could walk, that you really didn't need a car. But because we don't have this, this luxury of having merchants that provide our needs, people get in their cars. And to address the MBTA, that's a bigger issue. They don't even have, they don't have the vehicles nor the people to provide the service. And this is another one of the issues where people are saying, well, I might as well just get in my car so I can be sure to get to where I want to go, rather than standing out on the middle of Blue Hill Avenue. And don't let it be in the wintertime, because then you're standing in a snow mound that should be cleared out by the MBTA. And you're not getting that kind of service. You can get it downtown Boston, you can get it anywhere else, but in our community, our bus stops have not been shoveled out. We're not getting that kind of service. So it's a hodgepodge of a lot of issues that need to be addressed. But again, when we start talking about these developers coming in, yeah, I think parking should be tops on the list, and to make sure that they support what we need in this community. And available data, we don't have that. You know, I mean, we've been complaining about it for years, how people come through Milton, down Blue Hill Avenue, cut over through West Eldon Street to get to Gallivan Boulevard so that they can get on the expressway. Nothing has changed. The only thing that we were able to get changed was the traffic light at Morton and West Eldon Street. We got a working traffic light rather than a flashing yellow light that used to be out there for years. But I'm glad we're addressing this. And Matt, we're gonna have a big discussion come tomorrow night.
Matt's ready.
Great.
Yeah, well,
He's looking forward to it.
He better be, because this is going to be a fall over onto the same thing.
But
I
think though, Barbara, it's not, again, to Alla's point, it's not a conversation. The end isn't about parking. The end is really about less congestion, right?
Well, yeah.
That's where your goal really is. And there are all the things that we have to do to get there, but that is the goal. The goal is less congestion. And if it's explained in that manner, which I don't think I can say, like I said, as a person who reads zoning codes all the time, the only place to which you see addressed in the zoning codes for less congestion is in the first part of the overall city codes about congestion. I compare it to a bunch of different towns' zoning codes. And that is they're almost identical, with the exception of that.
Right.
That's where the exception comes in. Congestion is not being addressed. It's not being addressed in any of the neighborhood district zoning codes.
Right, but you know, and I'll say this last thing. I just get tired of developers coming in and saying they are a TOD. But they're they're across the street from another TOD, or 5 blocks down from another TOD. We're talking about congestion. There it is.
Right, but I think that, like others have said before, it has to begin with us just flat out saying, we will be glad to meet with X, Y, and Z developer when you first go and address these. And maybe
Exactly.
that is the way to go forward so that we're not in this constant battle and not really getting anywhere.
Exactly.
And also,
Yeah.
in order to address, I believe, the overall goal of to realize those cost benefits. If you're not having to build the parking, how is that cost? Why shouldn't you ask for the cost benefit in lower cost housing? Why shouldn't you?
Mhm.
You should, right?
Oh, yeah.
You definitely should say for better amenities, that as a non-discussion. It's not a discussion. It is it just has to be a starting point for us.
Right.
I think, let's not ask for less. Let's ask for things that really count, that make your day-to-days better. Don't ask for things, that are, I instead of asking for a parking space, I'd rather ask for less congestion so that my neighbor and child doesn't have their asthma is not agitated. But I also like to go and ask for better amenities around me, like better stores and anything else. Dennis, Mr. Roach, and then Helena.
Yeah, hi, team, everybody. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, hi. I believe that part of the problem that I see is I think the train has already left the station when you look at the people who have lived, like, I agree with everything that Barbara was saying. We've lived here for 40, 50 years, and the design and the quality of life, looking at where the existing residents have been here for so long, and it just seems like that whatever, when somebody raises their hand about some issue within the neighborhood regarding congestion, whatever, it seems like it's ignored. It's almost like there was an original plan for residents to live within this area with a combination of single family homes and low level apartment complexes and the triple deckers, etc. It was all blended in, and it seemed as if at the time everyone lived sort of in harmony. There was a great way to, as Barbara was saying, you could walk to the square, to the shops, etc. If you look at that, and then you can sort of build a map to where we're going now, which is we have all this congestion and suddenly we have people building complexes, and then suddenly we say, oh, we need A, B, and C if it concludes parking or non-parking or whatever. But you need to look at what happened many years ago, and then you see a map for the entire area. And so if you ignore what was happening back when people were living 40, 50 years ago, it was already in place. So you need to then look at that takes care of what is happening today. But I don't know. I think the train has just, as I said, left the station already. So you need to listen to what the residents were talking about at the very beginning when they moved in. And then you see a pattern for Mattapan as a neighborhood. It was all livable before.
Right. But I think that it's going to be tough. Yes, the train, as proverbial train, has left the station. But the fact is that we're still here, many of us who grew up here. And there are people who are new to the neighborhood, like Matthew, relatively new. His son, MJ, is an old soul, though, we think. He's been here before. The issue, I think, comes where we have to be consistent in demanding. And it's not only the city, but to earlier points made by Mr. Lopes and others, that we have a number of roads that are controlled by the state. And the state, Mass DOT, is a behemoth, to put it lightly. It does not play nicely with others. If you look at right now, the current state, Blue Hill and Morton Street, it has been like that for so many years. It is so infuriating to me as a walker, as a pedestrian. I believe that I think there should be a signature drive telling Mass DOT that they owe us $1,000 a day for every single day that they've left the road in that condition. I'm all voting to do that drive and get as many signatures as possible. And any funds raised go directly to Mattapan, period. Not anyone else, not to the general coffers, to us who have suffered as walkers, bikers, drivers, residents, and businesses, because it is absolutely horrendous. And there's no reason for it, but they have created that catastrophe and left it that way. Helena, and I think someone else has something.
Well, Fatima, I would love if you all did something, because I yell and scream about that every single day, literally almost. So please send me something that I can send to them to say, I am sick of it, just like you guys are. So do something like that, and I love it.
Oh, great. Anybody up for it? And I'll leave a group of residents so I know we'll come together and decide how the money should be spent. I'm sure Matthew can chair that committee, or Kathy Glenn. You can judge. Helena?
Yes, I just wanted to add a few points, 3 in specific. I wanted to circle back to a point that Kathy had made as being a single parent, right? And, overall, I see this whole big piece in controlling those who already currently live here, the modes of transportation, where we all know that the modes of transportation are not necessarily just those that live here or have been living here for a long time, right? So we have a lot of suburban traffic that's using our roadways using our streets for parking, because there's no residential parking like you have in Brookline, right? And there's using it for highways and byways to get to their employment. On top of that, when I think about what Kathy was saying as a single parent, and you have a child in school and your child is not in the area school, so you have to get yourself to work, you got to get your child to work, and then if they have an after school activity or curricular, how do you get to that child, get them home safely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that data point really must be inclusive as part of the overall conversation. How do we define family within the nucleus of all this transportation conversation? The other piece was, I know that the governor signed a bill recently in regards to building housing units closer to transportation access in suburban areas. So just to tickle my fancy, I decided, let me go sitting on some of those community meetings and see what they're talking about. And they are livid. In the meantime, there's all these additional incentives for this to happen, right? To me, it would add to would provide less traffic traveling through our roadways, because you would have more access to transportation. But for them, I'm going to just use this generally and lightly, it was more like more access to those being able to come into the neighborhood to live, not at a certain income level. So I was just thinking, on those 2 data points alone, I think there needs to be a concerted effort at looking at, even still, the placement of students in schools, because I have 5 schools less than a mile from my home, and I can almost guarantee that 98% of them are coming from all the way as far as East Boston, Everett, et cetera, to come to school way over here, and they're not using BPS school buses, they're using public forms of transportation, which puts them on the transit buses along with everyone else trying to get to wherever they need to go. So those points, I think you got to get the schools in there, the suburban communities in there, and really looking at the family nucleus and how these families are supposed to get around and be able to do all of this, even if we're talking about biking and transportation So I just want to add those little few pieces.
Thank you. Thank you for ending with that. Definitely, all modes of transportation have to be included. There is one thing to which I've said before in different groups, that I personally do believe that biking needs to become part of the physical education of all Boston public schools across the board. Not as an elective, but as a requirement within physical education. If you're actually going to go and create a transit system basically through the city, and you really want to create that culture, what better opportunity than to do it with our students and have it from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. Start with the tricycles and move your way up. When they're very young, they learn to follow directions, read signage, balance, getting along well with others on the road, all those things start very young, and it should go all the way up. Everybody should know how, every young person at least, if they're able, and there are all sorts of, bikes nowadays for all sorts of abilities, be able to ride a bike and know how to swim, right? Those are two things that you should be allowed to do as a Boston Public Schools student, no matter what part of the city, in order to participate fully in anything and everything, and to actually address equity. Because at the end of the day, we can't say we're going toward equity if we're not actually looking at all these questions up front in a development process, including not only talking about the 50,000 or 20,000 square foot project, but we're also talking about the 12,000 square foot project or the 5,000 square foot project, and whether or not, what benefits are we all getting, so that we're not just talking in isolation, because otherwise there's not going to be any movement, and it's not a win for anybody. And we do have to realize that if we're gonna actually bring things into Mattapan that are meaningful, we're gonna have to do the work. And I invite anybody to come with me 7 a.m. Sunday mornings, and start giving more ideas. 7 a.m. in Mattapan Square. That's right, folks. That's where it's at. So you can come with me on other days of the week, but I don't start at 7 a.m. during the week. But yeah, for sure. Is there anyone? Yes, it is a good walking time. I agree. Is there anyone else that has a closing remark or a question? Matthew, Pam, David?
No.
Alenza?
Nothing here.
Nothing here? Okay.
I just have a,
Hi, Adrian.
hi. I just want to know with the developers, does anyone say who do they have in mind? Just because the cost is so high, and to me it's outrageous. So I mean, has it been discussed? Do they say it at all?
You mean the cost for a parking spot, or?
No, I'm talking about who's going to rent these places that they're developing, and who do they have in mind?
Well, I can tell you right now, there are 3 bedrooms in Mattapan currently renting at $1,300 a month for those who are in Section 8, and they have no parking. So, it runs the gamut. And the lowest, I know 1 bedrooms, I know people who are renting a room for $1,000 a month in Mattapan. Not a house, not a unit, not a floor, 1 room.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So to go and to say that it's whatever saving it, I question how I think we've missed the window where you're thinking about how do people go and charge things. I think there has to be some balance, because otherwise we're going to drive each other all out the door.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah. But we're gonna have to wrap up here with Sandy and then Gina. Ms. Pitts. Sandy, please. You can unmute yourself if you're muted.
I'm gonna change, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna change the topic for a second. I live on Hazelton Street, and I've actually called into 311, and I've actually spoken to Rep. Holmes regarding the top of the street, Blue Hill and Hazelton Street, in terms of all the tires that have been thrown on the lot. What I'm now seeing is a Saturday night that cars are now parking there and music is blasting and people are hanging out. So I'm trying to figure out how do we fix it before it gets any worse? And Rep. Holmes, feel free to jump in at any point, because I've addressed it to you and I sent the pictures to you, and the tires are still there and nothing's been done, and now I just see it beginning to escalate.
That's an
So can I?
That's an ISD. And number 2, if you
No, so
because the time, if you could take it off together, that would be really great.
So let me just tell you, Sandy, I've talked to everyone from the mayor's office to the police. I think if Sean is still on the call, he'll tell you I've had 2 calls with him. The problem is it's a private property, and the city is not allowed to just go and clean it up and then just charge them a fee. So They are in litigation. The folks who own it are the people who own Boulevard Cleaners across the street. Clearly, we would want to just go in there and just remove all the tires and get it clean and just say, here's your fee. What they do keep doing, though, of course, is going and giving them a ticket. But it's because it's a private property is why it's a challenge. And so I will continue to do that, from Jessica to Sean to everyone. It is a problem for me because I think it's the very bad corners in my district, at the fire across the street and that happening. And so literally that is the thing I said to the mayor, this one corner in my district needs to be cleaned up for those two reasons. So please know it's getting an awful lot of attention by me, but that private property means we just can't go rip up the tires.
What about the hanging out now? Because now there were 4 cars parked there, music was blasting Saturday evening. So what do we do about
Sean,
that?
you still hear Sean on the call or no?
I don't.
Still here.
Officer Harris.
Oh, don't worry, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
What was the question?
So not only do we have the dumping of the tires, but Saturday evening I drove by and there are 4 cars parked there. Guys are just hanging out, their music's blasting. So before it gets to anything bigger, what do we do? It's before 10 o'clock, so it's not this ordinance of the music and stuff, and it's private property.
And it's private property.
Yes.
The only thing that you can, as well as things have changed as of late in terms of what we can and what we can't do. The only thing you can do is pick up the phone and call 911. If there are so many calls, then potentially they can be cited for being the keeper of an unruly house.
Okay.
That is about the most, and perhaps see what can be done to put them on the city's problem list as well.
Can I ask that the two of you connect also with Matthew, and Matthew, maybe we can, if not tomorrow's, then at another meeting, bring that up, because I'm sure that's not the only location.
Sure. I'm going to put my information in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much. And Sandy, if you want to put your information for Officer Harris in the chat, that'd be great too. Thank you.
FYI, if I can say a quick thing, because my family sold that premises to those people across the street, the laundry folks. They plan on building there. So
hold on. Before you can continue, I really do want to wrap this up. And if you want to be part of that conversation, I encourage you also to reach out to Matthew. That would
sure. I'll be part of that conversation, because I know.
Thank you so much. All right, Ms. Pitts, you have the final word for the convo for this conversation. Okay. And then we're going to move on to others, because I can feel the stares and burns that Pam is like, Fatima, you are again letting someone go beyond your time. But this is a hot button issue, so I think they're going to give me some grace. Ms. Pitts.
How's everyone tonight?
We're well, thank you.
Good. I know a lot of people talking about the rents, and you made a good point. A lot of people that are paying the $3,000 are on Section 8.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's set. Unfortunately, those are the only individuals that can afford, for the most part, that $3,000 and up. Mm-hmm. There's really no way of getting around that. I don't think rents are going to go any lower, just like purchasing houses aren't going to get any lower either.
It's not just a one thing. It's that no benefits are realized because
it's hard because people can't afford to live here, and everyone not going to qualify for Section 8 either. So,
but it's bigger than Section 8, and I think for anyone to go and to blame it's very easy to oversimplify the city and the state, but it's a lot more. I think that if we don't address it head on and unravel it, we're never going to get anywhere. And then
I agree, but I'm just saying where's the extra money for people? Where's the people that want to stay here? Who's helping them? That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Who's going to help those individuals? Yep. Everyone doesn't qualify for Section 8.
Right. You're absolutely right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. I think I have her on screen. There you are. Thank you, Alla, so much for being part of this conversation, giving us a lot of information. would love to invite you in the future to some of the committee meetings. Actually, I think the conversation really does need to be extended. If you're up for it, to for us, we would love for you to help us. Maybe it would be good to actually use the tool in a session if people would like to see that, and to actually ask a developer, we'd like to see the numbers. We'd like you to use this tool so that we can see some benefits realized and you see some benefits realized. Because ultimately, the best developers are those not only that end up giving us one development that is something that we like, but also wants to come back maybe and build things of quality so that we can keep it going. I think that's where, and make it livable, and that, because this past weekend, when they had the open streets in Jamaica Plain on Center Street, I thought about what would happen if we had the open streets in Mattapan Square. And I honestly sat and thought, why would I? Why would I want to go right now and shut down Blue Hill Avenue where there is beginning at Mattapan Square? What would people be doing? Where would they be shopping? At the 5 convenience stores that are selling lottery tickets? So after they bought the lottery tickets, what would they be doing? Would they be going to the liquor store? I don't know.
But they're supposed to have open street on Blue Hill Avenue. They never said what section.
They did say it's down. It's going down toward Grove Hall area. It's not up here. So to the point is that if we want to be a destination, we should at least want to be a destination that we want to be in first, right? That's our goal. So that people we want to be, doing things in our own streets comfortably, meeting with each other in community, and not shutting our doors away from each other. So that's where we're gonna leave the conversation. But thank you again so much, Alla, and I look forward to other conversations to bring about change.
Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Now that we have that next. Next on the agenda, we're going to move on to, do we have this properly? Matthew, do you have the agenda up? Oh, here it is.
Committee reports?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. I was looking at another screen. Do you want to start with for tomorrow's public meeting? And if you had the link, I didn't have the link to put it on the agenda to share it.
The link to
for the Public Services Committee. Yeah, I didn't have to share.
I'd be very happy to paste that into the chat here.
Thank you.
And I'll start off by echoing that thank you to Alla. If she's still on, I don't know if she hopped off. She's also very welcome to join tomorrow night if she's available, because I think we've done this in the past where we've kind of done like a little bit of a recap conversation of the of what was discussed here tonight, because obviously we have a lot of people on the Zoom here, and not everybody had a chance to speak, I'm sure, who might want to, and dive a little bit deeper into that. So so I have I've just posted the link to the Public Services Committee page. The agenda for tomorrow night is on there. Apart from that recap for tomorrow night of tonight's conversation, I think we're also hoping to discuss the potential for a group yard sale type thing. One of our committee members brought that up last month, and or over the last month, and we are also going to take a look back at some of the recommendations that we've made recently to the licensing board, to see what the results of those recommendations of the licensing board's findings were on those applications, just to make sure everybody's in the loop. I think that there were a couple that that didn't go the way that the council requested. So I want to make sure that we're talking about strategy and best ways to get our voice heard there. And So that's the agenda for tomorrow night. For anybody who missed it last month, we had a great conversation with Captain Flynn from BTD. The notes from that meeting you can also find in the right on that website I posted. So there's your link. Feel free to just come on by. The Zoom link's right in the agenda. And I look forward to hearing from you all and catching up again tomorrow night. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Next, for the zoning committee, this month's zoning committee, what we're going to be doing a little bit differently is that we're actually going to, we have two different projects. I'll be posting them up, who need to have community meetings before they get assigned to ZBA hearings. So that's what's going on. We also are going to be organizing our zoning committee meetings so that we can have a greater number of properties, developments to review, especially the smaller ones, to try to group them earlier in the process rather than waiting. And I think that it also, in light of the conversation that we had today, to encourage those developers, even though they're smaller developers, to take a look at some of the things that were brought up in the meeting earlier today regarding around the TDM tool, et cetera, and seeing how that can probably apply to them, because it seems that it would be a benefit to everybody, not only to the developer, but to the community at large. For the Environment, Parks, and Energy Committee, we had a meeting in June with the Parks Department from Commissioner Ryan Woods. It had to deal with at Almont Park, and specifically, we were promised to having the things that were promised were done and accomplished. But going forward, what we're working towards is to actually have a CPA grant applied for specifically for Almont Park to complete those items that Mr. Falk, I believe if he's still on the call, will be very happy. I've agreed to help complete that application and to put it in for Mattapan for CPA monies, to have that laundry list of items that were never completed for Almont Park. If there are others, individuals who would like to also bring some projects for CP, that could be possibly CPA funded projects, I encourage you to attend also the Environment, Parks, and Energy committee meetings. Next, moving on to community updates. We do have, I'd like to introduce, in case Eric James, if you want to come on screen. Are you there? Where's Eric?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can. Can't really, we see a silhouette.
Yeah, it's very dim lighting in my area.
Oh, okay.
I've been trying to improve that the entire meeting. My apologies.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll call it, there you go.
Better.
A little bit better. A little better. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Eric James, for those who don't know, is our new Mattapan and Dorchester neighborhood liaison. Eric, if you want to say a little bit about yourself.
Hi, nice to meet everybody. I definitely enjoyed listening on this meeting. I definitely plan to come to the rest of them and just observe and see what the general concerns are. As for me, my background, I was definitely born in Nigeria, brought over here when I was 1, and I've lived here my entire life. I went to Brighton High School, graduated, went to UMass Dartmouth, graduated, and then I spent 2 years as a neighborhood house teaching fellow for the 5th grade, where I taught children from between the ages of 10 and 12. So now I definitely transitioned into this aspect, and because of my love of advocation, my love of community, my love of just history and knowledge of the city in general, I definitely think that I can really hear the concerns that are being spoken and communicate them accordingly. So thank you for allowing me to sit in on this meeting, and I appreciate the welcoming of me into the community.
Thank you, Eric, for that nice intro. First, are there any neighborhood groups that have any community block parties or anything they want to talk about or invite people to, that something, whatever it is? You want? Alenza, there you go. You're on mute, Alenza. You can unmute if you want.
Thanks, Fatima. Hi, everybody. I don't have any neighborhood group updates.
But you have an update of some sort.
I do have a couple of different updates. The first is that we are working with the Mattapan farmers market. So we'll be supporting various different types of public art activities and performances at the farmers market. So it's a really great way to come out into the community. As folks know, since the pandemic started, we haven't been able to do a lot of Mattapan Open Streets, Open Studios events. I've heard from a lot of you that you missed the jazz brunches at Brothers and some of the outdoor public art activities that we used to do. So I just wanted to give folks a quick update on that. Actually, let me get off screen jump on screen because y'all can't see me. There we go. So yeah, so we have a few different projects that we're planning over the summer. So we're going to be supporting various activities at the farmers market. We're also going to be painting several electric boxes around the neighborhood. And we've been working last year anyway, before things got derailed due to the pandemic, we were working with the Vigorous Youth Group who came up with some really cool designs. So we're going to be painting them, and they're going to be painted around various themes having to do with cultures represented in the community. So that's really exciting. We are also going to be working with the Department of Conservation and Recreation to install some additional benches along the Neponset Greenway. We had also heard from many of you, particularly the seniors, that there's a large chunks of that walk path that do not have seating, which makes it really hard, especially on the Mattapan side, makes it hard for folks to find places to sit and rest along the path. So we're going to be working on several projects of that kind. So I wanted to give you all an update about that. And then I have another update regarding the FAQ, which is a different direction. Is it okay if I share my screen, Fatima or Matt?
Sure.
Great. Go ahead. Awesome. So I just wanted to show really quickly where we are. So a couple meetings ago, as you know, we had a meeting in May, I believe it was, where we did a group activity with members from the council to start collecting questions that folks have about Blue Hill Avenue. And the plan is to compile those questions and submit them to the city for response. So I'm trying not to show you all my major tabs, but that's what happens when you're busy. So never minding all the tabs up there.
Whoa.
You don't have to look at it, Fatima. Nobody gotta look at it. The point is, this is the FAQ that we started. So we took all of the input when folks were using those digital Post-it notes, and we started to reframe them, because some of them were comments, some of them was kind of like, what's this about? Some of them were very specific to blocks in corners along Blue Hill Ave, from Mattapan Square to Morton Street. We are going to try to do this again at a later point where we go from the rest of Blue Hill, so from Morton all the way to Grove Hall. But for now, this is what we have started to do to reshape. So I just want to give you all this update so that you can see that we have been working on your questions and trying to compile them in an organized fashion. We have shared these questions so that we have so far with the city already. And so they're working on the responses, particularly to some of the questions that require follow-up either with the state or, you know, have to do some particular research digging. But just so you know, so we have active transit, like walking and biking. We've got infrastructure. We heard a lot of questions about lighting, furniture, planters. We heard a lot of things around environmental and climate change. So we tried to put those into some top questions. Driving experiences, you know, obviously parking is a big topic today. There's obviously a lot more questions that can be added after today, I'm sure. And then there's congestion and driving concerns, business economic impact, public transit, and then disruptions to service. And then there was another sort of big bucket list of like different things that people were talking about, different kinds of impacts, like social impacts, housing, etc. So we started a section for that too. And then there's also research. A number of questions that you all had raised have to do with like, has there been an impact study done? Has there been an air quality study done along Blue Hill Avenue? Has there been other types of feasibility tests that have been conducted? So we are trying to pull that together. And then what will also be added in addition to this running list of questions is something in the form of a glossary. So we're going to break down some of these acronyms and some of these key terms that you know, often are kind of thrown out there, like what exactly do people mean when they say transit-oriented development or TOD, that kind of thing. So if you have additional questions, which I'm sure you do, I've created this Google form, which I just popped into the chat. So you can continue to add and submit questions. And, you know, of course, we'll send that out in an email blast. But if there are additional questions that you'd like to add to that, to the running list, we have that repository. This is in nowhere complete, FYI. This is just what we've been able to get with the FAQ thus far. I imagine it's going to be multiple pages longer by the end. And just as a brief reminder, we think after we've done the second round of collection intake in early fall, so probably September or October, where we do the rest of Blue Hill, we'll then clean it up and submit the next set of questions to the city. So at some point, probably in the late fall or early winter, the FAQ will be ready. It's just going to take time because we want to make sure we're getting as many questions and following up as best as possible. So I will pause there. Thank you very much. And my contact info is in the form. Most of you have my contact info anyways. I'll pop it in the chat as well. So if you have any follow-up questions, just let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Alonso. And I'll also post it on the site so people will have just the constant link for you. Vicky and then Shiva.
Good evening, everyone. It's Vicky Siggers, Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition, Food Access Manager. Just wanted to share that this coming Saturday, we will be having an event. It's called Moving for Life. Normally it's at the Boston Nature Center. We have moved it to the farmer's market. And we'll have lots of activities around fitness. You know, that's one of the wonderful things that we do. And also letting you also know that the Summer Eats program is at the market. And they will be doing a cooking demo, giving out samples of what it is that they will be cooking safely. It will already be prepared so that folks can just take that with them or snack on it while they're there. And chair massage, yoga, and some other fun activities. It would be great if you bring your children, not just for the Summer Eats program, but we have school books, children books that we are giving out for free. And just, you know, It's a space, as you always know, that this is a community space, along with having our farmers there, because without our farmers, there would not be a farmers market, and also supporting all the wonderful and hard work that they are doing and bringing locally grown food to this community. So, yeah. And I just want to just give a real shout out that our opening day, July the 9th, was amazing. It was beautiful. I have definitely learned how to delegate and to, oops, sorry. That putting things and activities and assignments or tasks into trusting hands has been a lifelong lesson that we are all here to make sure that everything that we are doing in our community is successful and that we're reaching people that so need the services. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicki. Chevelle, you had this?
Yes, I have two announcements. So I wear 3 hats in this space. One is I'm the executive director of Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition. I just want to invite you all to a biking event that we're having on July 23rd, which is the same day as Vicki's birthday. In this event, it fosters youth leadership, as well as to raise awareness to the city or to other folks that Black and brown people do bike in Mattapan. And my second hat is I own a business called Consult Leela, which we are trying to engage the young people, but also individuals 20 to 40 in the planning processes that are happening in the community of Mattapan, more specifically Mattapan Square. And so we're collaborating with Spark Boston to host the Mattapan Neighborhood Social, and would love for you all to invite those in our age range that we're targeting to come to the social to learn more about the Blue Hill Ave project, the Mattapan Square project, and to meet others that are in our target demographic.
Thank you, Chevelle. Chevelle, do you have a flyer? If you want to forward it to me at some point, I can post it for you.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Leon? Fatima, I'll also make sure that the flyer for Moving for Life will get sent to you.
Oh, thank you, Vicki. Cleon? And then
hello, everyone. Thank you, Fatima. I wanted to also say, everyone with all the activities, I posted my email and my phone number in the inbox. If you wouldn't mind sending me a lot of the activities that's going on, I would like to repost them also. And also we're doing something at Shea Booze on July 13th. So if anyone wants to come out, it'll be adult skate, just a community event. And we will be doing something in the future, and I will contact you, Fatima, to see if we can put something together. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you. Kate?
Hi, Fatima.
Hi. Good evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kay. I work for Mattapan Food and Fitness. I'm the Activity Living and Environment Coordinator. And I probably would get yelled at by Chevelle if I don't announce this. I am hosting Soca and Sweat Boot Camp on Saturdays for the summer. If you don't mind if I share the flyer real quick, Fatima?
Sure. If you want to send it to me also, I can post it.
No problem. I'll do both.
Okay.
As you guys can see the flyer, it's every Saturday at 9 o'clock. It's meeting at the Mildred football field off of North Fork. Available for all levels, men, women, you're allowed to bring your children as well. And I hope to see some of you guys smiling faces. And again, it's on Saturdays at 9 o'clock. And I'll make sure to send you the flyer, Fatima.
Okay, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Okay. If there are any city updates, anybody, or state updates anybody wants to do? Kenya or Eric, if you're still there, or who else is here from the city? I think Councilor Worrell's office.
I'm still here.
Councilor Arroyo's office. Kenya, if you want to go first.
I don't have any updates. I'm just here as a listening, just listening in.
Okay. Is there anyone, thank you. If there's anyone from Councilor Rowe, you wanted to say anything?
Good evening, everyone, and great meeting. Very informative, and I always love being in the community because we get to hear what we should be working on the council in order to make sure that we're increasing the quality of life in our neighborhoods. So took a lot of notes. So definitely going to be trying to change some policies to make sure that like the cleaning aspect of over there at the auto body shop. Want to definitely take a look at how we can create a program where our only tool in the toolkit is not a $15 violation, right? For someone who is storing trash or having overgrown weeds in our yards. So great meeting. But I want to also touch on some of the budget wins that we received here in the District 4 in my office. We heard loud and clear on the campaign trail that housing was a big factor, #1 issue. So we are creating here in the city of Boston a homeownership voucher program. So as of now, you can use your BHA voucher to purchase a home. We know that there's a 40,000 person wait list to BHA. So we want to create another voucher for those that are stuck in the middle, that are not on BHA or don't make enough to buy an open market. We want to create another voucher program on the city level to help with those efforts. We also received increased capital spending inside of District 4. Our office took a look at the capital plans over the last 5 years, and District 4 had the least amount of capital expenditures in the last 5 years, where other districts had over $100 or over $1 billion. District 4 was the only district that did not have capital expenditures top $200 million. So we're asking for urgency, and we're asking for equitable investments in future capital expenditures. So we did get more this year, but we're asking for that to increase year over year so we can catch up to other districts in the city of Boston. So capital expenditures are, traffic calming measures, it's our parks, it's our public facilities, it's our schools. It's, it tributes to the health and the environment of our neighborhood. The other thing that we received was 2 additional Hokies. And Hokies are, the elbows behind the brooms that clean our main streets and our commercial areas. So we have 2 additional Hokies, but what we need is help from, everyone in the community to, get the word out that the city's hiring so that we can have someone provide that service. So we have 2 additional Hokies in District 4. And then we also received more additional money for rental vouchers, and also in increased funding. As you all may or may not know, we have a new office in the city of Boston for Black men and boys advancement. And we have a funding for $1.6 million for that new department that's going to be focused on the advancement of Black men and boys here in the city of Boston. Other things, I want to just let you know that we're doing neighborhood walks in our neighborhoods or throughout our districts. And if there's any area that you want us to take a look at, or any department you want us to invite to that neighborhood walk, or want to know when the walk will be happening in your neighborhood, please reach out to our office, and we would love for you to join us to hear the issues in the neighborhood. We are also offering technical assistance. So if any civic association or nonprofit that needs help, with a website, the email contact list, or just anything, just please feel free to reach out to us. We have someone that's dedicated to helping nonprofits and civic associations with any type of technical assistance, especially website and graphics. We also have an event coming up on July 16th. We are starting to do engagement on creating a youth council, because the youth voice is very important in our community. We want to pull them in. So we're having an event called Heat Wave on July 16th at the basketball court next to the Lee School from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Free event. Please come out. Let the young people know about this event. But this is our first step on engaging the young people and then building off of that to get their voices more involved inside of our civic associations and also into civic leadership. We also will be hosting a Black men's event called Mental Shift. We want to engage our Black men throughout the city of Boston. We're gonna have a panel talking about fatherhood, mental health, economics, and just the history of the African diaspora here in America. That will be happening in late July. And we also have a newsletter that if you want to sign up for, it talks about all the events that's taken place throughout the district. So everything that's shared with me is on this newsletter. RFPs, jobs, not just jobs with the city, but jobs from like Children's Hospital, Rise Development. We are engaging a lot of for-profit, nonprofits, high institutions to share their jobs with us so we can share it with the community. So if you want to be part of that newsletter, please send me an email and we'll get you a part of that weekly newsletter. And then last but not least, we are always looking for policy collaborators. We believe that those closest to the pain should be developing the policies. So we want to work with you and hear your ideas on what we should be doing as a city, and need your help in order to get those policies passed through. Always feel free to reach out and I'm here to help.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. Let's see, Judnice, or I'm not sure if Jordan's here.
Yes, it's me, Judy.
Hi.
Yes. Thank you again for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here. I don't have any updates other than just Jordan and I are going through the notes that he took while he went on the all the walkthrough that you both did for Alma Park in Alma. So yeah, just going through those and just addressing those issues and letting the council know. Other than that, I don't have any other updates, but thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone, Rep Holmes, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I know we're down to less than a minute at this point. Apologize. I'll go as fast as I can.
Go for it.
I think Councilman Wells is going to take the 311 that was in the call. So I think Gina, he's going to grab that. I will work with, oh, I'm sorry. Chris may want to say something. I'm sorry about that, Chris. He did say something before. Sean, he and I, there are a number of locations. I did see some folks on the call from Lucerne Garden. I think I still saw, but anyway, Lucerne Garden has the exact same problem. There's a group in an area that Sean and I are working on around folks hanging out, just like they're hanging out at the corner of Hazleton. We're looking to be very proactive in these areas where people just deciding to hang out and try to find the right solution that does not just go and lock everyone up, but get the community to have the quality of life that we want. The next is just one that I think it's out there already. The information you have already, Fatima, on the new bus network.
Yes.
712 is tomorrow, Forest Hills 3 to 5. Let's make sure we do that. And then 719 is Bruce Bowling, 6 to 8. So 2 right here in the neighborhood. If we can get to those, that would be great. Trying to go fast here. The opera money, we are, if you have not seen the news yet, you may know that we're probably going to pass in the House on Wednesday. The next wave of the funding that came from opera, we had about 3.8 billion. I can tell you there were more than 800 amendments today. I think I put in about 20 of them, trying to figure out what do we do for COVID response. We still do have the conversation, of course, around what to do with the funds that we have, about another 3.5 billion from the funds that we have that from the budget. So more to come there. SJC did today approve the mail-in voting. We passed what's called the Votes Act that almost essentially all of us, I hope on this call, will be getting, like we've seen last year for voting, something for an application to mail in so you can vote by mail. The Supreme Judicial Court did, even though the Republicans voted against it, and then of course petitioned to not have it. So in the next week or two, you should be getting from the Secretary of State our mail-in packages. We had a very good voter turnout. We want to continue to have that in the September 6th election. The Republicans also are trying to stop the undocumented licensing bill that we passed. It was signed, and so please keep your eye on that. That might be on the November ballot. And then just wanted to say in the day's offer language, I did include something from the governor, which was around one of the things I think is a concern for us, and that is our businesses in our neighborhood do not own our commercial properties. So looking for ways to get them some grants and opportunities to actually purchase their buildings and not just be paying rent to everyone. We're trying to get that back into the budget. And the mayor, something I filed for her was around dealing with the contracting. Brian and all of the others down at City Hall passed a home rule petition several weeks ago, and I filed it as a bill, but then it came over late. So I'm trying to get it in the ARPA funding and bill as well, so that we can now have it so that there are a minimum of 3 people of color that's in each application that happens above our need, that the contract's above $10,000 or more in the city. As fast as I can go. Have a great day. I know we're 8:30. Thanks.
We're half an hour over early. Let's stop now. Chris, if you wanted to.
I think that Rep Holmes covered it. There's been a lot going on in the House, and making that last push before the end of July. But that's all we've got going on. Thanks, y'all.
Okay. Officer Harris, if you're still on, you wanted to give just any brief updates, something news from the department.
I'll do my best to make it quick. Let me just turn on my police radio. All right, so thus far, 456 guns have been taken off of the streets of Boston, compared to, I believe, at the same time last year, it was somewhere around 432. And in terms of the Part 1 crimes, and this would just be year to date, and I'll give these quickly. For rapes and attempted rapes, last year there were 5, this year there was 4, down by 20%. Robberies were 10 for 2021. This year, so far, 7, it's down by 30%. Domestic aggravated assaults, and just remember, this is for the 30-day time period from 6/11 to, of course, today's date, which is the 11th of July. So there was 15 domestic aggravated assaults. Same time period this year, 18, increased by 20%. Non-domestic aggravated assaults, last year there was 23, this year 20, down by 13%. Commercial burglaries are actually up. Last year 1, this year 2. Once again, 100% increase. And I know that 100% increase, that can be a little off-putting, but you know, you're literally looking at the difference between 1 and 2. Larcenies from a motor vehicle, last year there were 9, this year there were 15, an increase of 67%. On that one, I say it time and time again, please make sure you lock your car doors, be vigilant. I know we can all see, you know, as people are, you know, making their ways through our neighborhoods, and people have been displaced from other parts of the city. Just please do your part to mitigate your chances of becoming the victim of a property crime. For other larcenies, there were 25 last year, this year 28, an increase of 12%. And auto theft last year, 5, this year 6, 20%. So on a whole, crime is down, but that does very little to allay the fears. that a lot of our residents have been experiencing, especially with some of the more high-profile challenges that the city is facing as of late, especially when it comes to crime. There is one police report that I pulled. There was a huge fight on Thursday, July 7th. Let's just say there were a few hundred teenagers that were fighting anywhere from Norfolk Park onto Blue Hill Ave and as far down as Babson Street. Of course, all officers from Area B3 responded, but the crowd was so big, we had to call in for help from other districts as well. So units from C11 showed up and B2 showed up, and there were some additional Victor units, which is the gang unit, that showed up as well to help disperse the crowd. I think everyone is a little too happy that the pandemic is over. Some people are forgetting some of the rules and decorum of what it means to be a good neighbor as we are all reintroduced to society as a whole, as the restrictions from the pandemic have been lifted. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah, I just had, when I saw that come out in the news about what happened last Thursday, I guess, Thursday evening, was that at residence?
I'm sorry, Fatima, let me turn my volume up a little. Can you restate that, please?
What was that at a residence?
No, it started at a park and it
at a park.
Yeah, but there were but I know an incident you're talking about as well. So there were a few incidences that spiraled from one. So everything more so started as a large group getting into a fight in the area of Blue Hill Ave and Walk Hill. But as I said, it spread down to Norfolk Park. It reached down as far as Babson Street, and there was some skirmishes as far away as Wellington Hill as well, as the group was dispersing.
Okay. Are there any, I think, I'm not at the Mattapan Community Health Center, I believe, Azan, I don't see him on right now, but does the department have been able to work with the interventionists in order to address some of the issues at all?
Well, what we do have is, so in terms of the intervention aspect of it, you know, one thing about Boston, I don't know if it's tied into the Mattapan Community Health Clinic, but what I can tell you is that Boston has a ton of resources. Here at B3, we have a family advocate, and we also have a best team clinician as well that reaches out to families in need as we identify them from 911 calls.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Officer Harris, for your attention and time. It is 8:40, well past the witching hour. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week. I feel like the guy from what do you call it, Bugs Bunny. If you're able to attend tomorrow's Public Service Committee meeting, I encourage you. They're always good topics, and they're topics that we, the residents, bring up. The conversation that we had tonight, we're going to be formally looking at it, adding in those components into questions formally as part of the community benefit standards for the council as a whole, which means for our neighborhood as a whole. I would encourage, when the date is set for that, I hope that everyone will come and attend, because what should happen is that what we decide upon is actually not only brought to the council level, but brought down to the neighborhood association level. So when the neighborhood associations are speaking with the developer, when they look at things, they're able to not only talk about parking, but also to talk about benefits and how whatever is being proposed, how it fits into a community as a whole, so that we can actually have real conversations and talk about real needs, not only about one thing. So with that, if there are no other questions for me, if anyone has any questions for me, I will be the last one to leave the room. I love you all, but I bet you gotta go.
Bye, everyone. See everyone next month and on the other community service meetings throughout Vermont.
We will be having an August 1st meeting, but it actually is going to be a forum meeting where we're going to be having the Secretary of State's town hall.
Okay, excellent.
Right. So that's because the primaries, I believe, are August 6th. No, I'm sorry, September 6th. Right. Not August 6th, September 6th. All right. Good night, everyone. Good night, Suzanne. Good night, Marcella. Good night, Ms. Fields.
Good night, all.
Good night. Night, Alyssa.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Their names flashing across the screen here.
Good night.
Good night, Kay. Kay, I'm going to try to get there. Get my body moving.
Okay, let's go.
Night, Chad. Thank you for great questions, Chad. Night, Kenya.